live on the Game Nashville Sports Network.
This update is brought to you by Holiday World Splash and Safari. Celebrating 25 years of free unlimited soft drinks, just a short drive from Nashville. It's a place for family memories and a summer you won't forget. Get your tickets at holidayworld.com. This is Nick Frazier. The Florida Panthers continue their path of defending their dominance as they stay undefeated in Game 7s versus the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Panthers ended the night with a 6-1 victory. They go on to face the Carolina Panthers Tuesday night at home. And the world number one Scotty Scheffler championship. Scheffler won shooting 11 under and a winning stroke margin of 5. Make sure to tune in this week to 94.9 The Fan as the Nashville Sounds are back in action at First Park. Their first game of the series is tomorrow evening with coverage beginning at 20.
For more, log on to theGameNashville.com. Your sports live here on the Game Nashville Sports Network.
D-Mace, Fingen, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Fingen, David James, and we have a new intern, Emily. Hello, Emily. Thank you for joining us.
DVDDE. That's too long, huh?
And Frazier's always
too
going to
long.
be
F.
He's got a lifetime membership.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
We're basically the alphabet.
Absolutely. There we go.
Welcome, Emily, to the program. We're happy to have you.
Welcome to the family.
We'll try to educate you somehow.
How? I don't know.
I also do want to give a quick shout out. Our thoughts are with Joe Rexroad, who apparently was bitten by a tick.
What? Hold on. Why is something always going on with Joe? Joe, I was in a hotel, okay, and I got bit by a tick, and I didn't rush myself to the hospital or to the doctor's office, okay, Joe? Something's always going on with Joe. I thought Joe was tough. He's from Michigan. He went to Michigan State, man.
Tick bites are no joke, though, dude.
Man, no. Go see about it later, man.
I think he had to leave Robbie and Rexroad early to go to the urgent care.
Do we have confirmed that this was not an ordinary tick bite?
Yeah,
is
is it like a
or
super
is this
tick?
a precautionary?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that.
Because it can get bad. Like
it
can get really bad.
It can. But you're
in
right.
a worst case scenario.
You're right. It does seem that these weird things happen to Joe Rexroad.
Yeah, it's like he falls downstairs.
Which is probably why he took the extra step.
Yeah.
Like, I got to get to urgent care because weird stuff happens to me.
Yeah, my bad. I'm sorry, Joe.
They kind of know.
Yes.
Yeah.
My bad. I'm sorry, Joe. You're absolutely right.
Joe,
Willie.
we're thinking of
If it were me, I'd probably be like, just rip it off and then just
Yeah, and if it
Should be
doesn't
all right.
bother me, I should be all right.
Joe, if you're
I'll monitor
listening,
it.
until I faint or something.
Joe,
Or
if you're
my arm
listening,
starts
let
to
us know.
Blow up the sides of it, whatever.
If you're listening, let us know how you're doing. Our thoughts are with Joe Rexroad during
We need an update. We definitely need an update.
Joe, I got
During
bit by a
this difficult
rattlesnake, man, and walked 14 miles, man, to get to the hospital. Come on.
See, I think that I think you're kidding, but I could totally see you doing that.
I'm just messing with Joe. That's all.
Like Paul Pierce walking from his house to the studio
with no shoes on,
no shoes on, and
or
a staff robe
socks.
a couple of weeks ago.
I couldn't have did that, bro. I would have been like, I'll walk the last 4 miles, but I'm not walking the whole 15.
But we do have our Final Fours.
Yes.
In the NBA and the NHL. In the NBA, we have Oklahoma City versus Minnesota in the Western Conference Final, the New York Knicks and the Indiana Pacers in the Eastern Conference Final, The NBA will crown its 7th different champion in 7 years for the first time in league history. So if you're a fan of parity, you're absolutely getting it in the NBA.
Okay, now that is a statement that about 10 years ago, we would have thought, no way is that ever going to happen, right? Because there was a full era of a lot of the same teams revolving, famously Golden State and Cleveland for a while, but the Lakers had their run. We're not used to this, right?
No,
this is a different era of the NBA. I don't know if it's analytics or lack of top.
I think these players are so much better.
Out how to build a roster that you don't have to have the 3 superstars. Because for a while it was like you got to get the big 3, right? The Heat had the big 3 for a while. Well, the Spurs might have been the exception, but they kind of had a big 3.
The Spurs had the big 3. They had Duncan. They had Duncan. Ginobili and Parker, then Duncan, Ginobili, and Kawhi, and they've had their renditions of the big 3 throughout their years.
Here are the 6, soon to be 7 different champions in that span. The Raptors in 2019, the Lakers in 2020, the Bucks in 2021, the Warriors in 2022, the Nuggets in 2023, and the Celtics in 2024.
And the NBA loves it like that because every fan base can just about, if you're looking at it from that standpoint, you're thinking I have a better chance at winning a championship in this sport than I would in, say, other sports, because the movement of superstar players, back, in the 80s and 90s, superstar players were not able to move so fluently. So you had to stack Laker teams, or you had to stack Boston teams, or the Piston teams that would win. Now that these superstars are able to move after 3 years, or if it doesn't work out, they're traded the next following year. Superstars are able to move more fluently, so you're going to get each and every year. I guarantee next year it'll be another championship. It'll be a different champion.
One thing I've learned over the past couple of days, because I know a lot of people who are fans of the New York Knicks, they hate the Indiana Pacers.
I'm sure they do.
The Knicks and Pacers, I feel, is an underrated rivalry in professional sports.
It is. And there is the 30 for 30, which I'm sure will circulate on your ESPN platform, whichever one you have, ESPN Plus. If you're old school like D. Mason and I, still plugged in.
Yes.
It will come up on the rotation. But
yes.
Those days of the 90s, I was recapping this over the weekend with I was up in Granville, Ohio. Congratulations to the Denison Big Red.
Shout out, Big Red.
Swept through the regional.
Big Red.
So they got the super regional coming up, trying to get to the Division III version of Omaha, the Division III College World Series, which is actually in Cleveland. But one of Mahoney's good buddies in his freshman class is from Indianapolis. And I was educating him on the Spike Lee, Reggie Miller, Patrick Ewing, John Starks. Well, he knew, but he wasn't old enough, obviously, to really
watch it. Yeah.
And some of those battles, those were great battles, man. So we're going to see footage from that. It's going to be great to get that rivalry heated up again.
It's good for the NBA.
What are we going to see from Spike Lee?
Oh, man. We're going to see vintage Spike Lee. But this is good. When the Knicks are good, and I get it, the Lakers, it'd have been perfect if the Lakers, Knicks, Boston were all still in it. But when the Knicks are good, it's good for the NBA. When they are competing for a championship, which they never do, what was the 80s was the last time that they truly competed.
First conference finals in 25 years.
Yeah, so it's like
1999.
90-something, yeah.
Remember they had a lockout shortened season, and they made a very improbable run.
And Patrick Ewing.
And 99 was Jeff Van Gundy, Allen Houston. I think that was post Patrick.
That was
Latrell Sprewell.
Latrell Sprewell was on the team, but they barely made the playoffs, and then they made a run, and then they got schooled by the Spurs in the final. But that was a very improbable run, and they haven't had a lot of consistent winners since a little earlier in that decade. The time when they were battling with the Michael Jordan Bulls. They lost in the final to Akeem in 94. Well, the OJ thing was going on. What a phenomenon that was. But
Same day.
those mid-90s teams were the last great nicknames.
Yeah, that's the last
That's
team
a
they had
long time ago.
any consistency.
Yeah.
One texter says Timothy Chalamet is Spike Lee's heir. Have you seen these videos of the actor Timothy Chalamet at the Knicks games and outside Madison Square Garden losing his mind for the Knicks?
The other guy I see at every other time out is Ben Stiller.
Ben Stiller, big Knicks fan.
Huge Knicks fan.
One of my favorite moments from the NBA season was a fan, I believe, won a car during a half-court shooting competition and was just overcome with emotion. Sought out Ben Stiller on the sideline because he was sitting courtside and just wrapped him up in a hug.
Spike Lee must be like, what about me?
Yeah,
what am I chopping?
Spike Lee is old news. But the Timberwolves and Thunder tip off their series on Tuesday, the Pacers and Knicks on Wednesday. We also have our Final Four in the NHL. In the Western Conference, the Dallas Stars against the Edmonton Oilers. And in the Eastern Conference, long live the Southeast Division, the Carolina Hurricanes and the Florida Panthers, who put the finishing touches on the Toronto Maple Leafs last night. 6-1, second consecutive 6-1 win in Toronto. And we'll talk about some of the fallout from that game because there was something that happened in that game that irked Willie Donick.
Yes.
But man, oh man, the Toronto Maple Leafs. So that's now, I believe, 0-6 in Game 7s. In the Austin Matthews era. The franchise has lost 7 consecutive Game 7s. Earlier this postseason, the Avalanche lost in Game 7 to the Dallas Stars, and the Avalanche became the first NHL, NBA, or Major League Baseball team to lose 7 consecutive Game 7s. Now the Maple Leafs join them, having lost their 7th consecutive Game 7, blown out on home ice last night.
It's so bizarre because it's such a weird combination of a team that has been so good consistently in the regular season, but the same thing happens. And I can see why it drives people mad, but in that city, it is so unique. They also lost a Game 5 in the bubble, which was the equivalent of a Game 7. It was that qualifying round to Columbus. So you can throw one more in there where, and I think the stat that really has leaked out is that for a team that has been a prolific offensive team, more often than not during this era, they haven't scored in the big games. They're averaging like 1 point something goals per game in these deciding games you're talking about. So it is something. But here's an interesting note on the Final Four. Jacob Underwood, I got to give him credit for this. He looked at this. 0 division winners. So it shows you don't really need to win your division. It helps, I guess.
Or is this just an outlier?
Some years it probably helps. Yeah. Is it an outlier? And only one of the teams remaining finished in the top 8 of overall points. So it was like Dallas, and Dallas was close. They finished only behind Winnipeg, who won the President's Trophy. But teams like Edmonton and Florida, they sort of coasted for a while. They weren't worried about exactly how many points they ended up with. They dealt with some injuries. They let guys heal up. They used the LTIR. Wink, wink, nod, nod. That's another thing that I still think has to be fixed, that I don't feel confident they're going to, especially if Gary Bettman's saying, oh, yeah, we're going to have this new CBA done by what are they going to do about the LTIR? Like the Florida Panthers would not have Marchment. I mean, sorry, not Marchment, but Marchand, if it weren't for the injury to Tkachuk.
Or probably Seth Jones.
Seth Jones,
who had an awesome game.
2
last
enormous
night.
additions.
Both of them were great
enormous
last
additions
night.
that they would not have had room for were it not for. But you have to be good enough to have a guy like Tkachuk get hurt and still make the playoffs. But it is part of that formula as to why the top dogs in the regular season don't necessarily make it to the Final Four.
On top of
President's
that,
Trophy since 2013, no President's Trophy winner has won the Stanley Cup. It continues
cursed.
year in.
It's cursed.
Is it cursed, or is that just the nature of hockey?
It could be a little bit of both. On top of that note from Jacob, the 2025 Stanley Cup playoffs mark the first time in Major League Baseball, NBA, NFL, or NHL history that the teams with the 4 best records in the league were all eliminated in the same round.
Wow.
Winnipeg 1, Washington 2, Vegas 3, Toronto 4.
Well, does that show parity at least once you get in the playoffs? That just because you are the number 1 seed in hockey, they reshuffle, don't they?
They do not.
They used to.
They used to
for a long time. They don't anymore.
And we'll talk about what the NFL.
Yeah.
We'll talk about what the NFL might doing with the playoff
it's
seeding
interesting.
later.
These
in
are
the
all
show.
things that this time of the year are fun to debate because it really illustrates that the format does matter.
Mhm.
It does matter. But the 4 teams that have made it, they weren't really chasing division titles.
Mhm.
I think they were building for the playoffs. Is that fair to say, Adam? You think that's right? They wanted to be prepared for the play. The 4 teams that have made it have all been there many times.
Yes.
And they have all sort of hardened themselves. They've tweaked their rosters. They're like, how do we win in the playoffs? It's not about grabbing every point in the regular season.
Yeah, I would say so.
Dallas, think about Dallas. If you were at the Predators finale,
you would have never thought.
The Predators crushed them.
Yeah.
And they lost one of their
away.
star forwards in that game, too.
But Dallas played their lineup. It wasn't like they sat their best players. They played every one of the starters that was available, Heiskanen being the one guy that wasn't ready. And they scored the first shift of the game. And then the Predators blew them out for their 7th straight loss to end the season, the Stars. And then here they are.
Maybe
here they are in the Western Conference Final.
Maybe the sort of attention to detail as the year winds down isn't as laser focused, especially when you're in the playoffs. So looking at them that last game against the Predators may have been just a little bit fool's gold, in a sense, because once we get in the playoffs, it's we rip it back on. Yeah,
I think about the Oilers. The Oilers were dealing with a ton of injuries down the stretch of the regular season.
Oh, yeah.
And it looked like it was taking its toll early in that first round series. They lost the first 2 games to the LA Kings. I believe they gave up 6 goals in each of those games, and now they can't be stopped. Like they have found their rhythm. Players are getting healthier.
Right. And another use of LTIR. Evander Kane and John Klingberg, and I give those guys credit. I wasn't expecting much from them. They didn't play all year.
They're ready now.
Evander Kane did not play at all.
Right. How many games did Klingberg play? Not
10, maybe.
Maybe. And it was months and months ago since we last saw him. He's playing great.
By the way, the Predators.
That's a weird thing about hockey.
Yes.
And I don't know if that's
good or
really
bad.
how it should be. But should you have to play in a certain amount of games to qualify for the postseason? I don't know.
The Predators' 3 first-round picks, by the way, are locked in. They will have the 5th overall pick, which is their own. They will have the 23rd overall pick from Tampa Bay and the 26th overall pick from the Vegas Golden Knights. So 5, 23, and 26. That is locked in for the NHL draft in about a month from now.
Yes. And then they will have a very high 2nd round pick. So 4 of the top 35 picks or so. Now, does
that mean anything? Because when you say that in other sports,
in football, that would be
huge.
It's
like great, but in hockey, because of the development.
Yes, and because these kids are so young, and our guest who really follows this, and I think he's pretty good at what he does, Scott Wheeler, he has said that it's a thin top of the draft. They'll get a really good player at 5, but after that, on paper, it doesn't look like this is as deep a draft class as it could be. Now, only time will tell, but you hope that you're not going to hit 4 for 4. But let's hope they go 2 for 4 and get 2 really good players out of that mix.
But you're not going to know that until realistically
20,
years
30?
down the line. Yeah, it's like, okay,
really,
we got a good player.
You won't be able to judge until about 2030.
615-737-1025. Your thoughts on the weekend in the NBA playoffs and the Stanley Cup playoffs. 615-737-1025. But coming up next, there was something that happened in the game last night between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers that really grinded Willie Donnick's gears. And we'll discuss that coming up next. 615-737-1025. Tune in for the Indy 500 race on 1025 The Game this Sunday. Coverage begins at 10 a.m. and is brought to you by Twin Peaks, home of the 29-degree beer.
All right, let's talk Loan Pronto. If you are struggling to find your groove in the financial world in terms of how do you manage the expenses you have, maybe some credit card debt, maybe some car payments, you're not alone if you're out there. Or maybe you're looking to start a home improvement project and you're sitting there going, boy, I'd love to do this. How do I fund it? If you're a homeowner, you likely have thousands and thousands of dollars available in your home's equity. And Loan Pronto is there to help you with the Rapid Equity Loan Program. One client got over $300,000 approved in under 24 hours. They paid off debt, renovated their kitchen, and cut their monthly expenses by $1,800. Now, you may not fit in that class, but if you're any level of this, they can help you with that. Instant approvals, low rates, no hard credit pull up front. Just call Loan Pronto and find out how you can use your home equity to your advantage. Free instant home appraisal. See how much cash you can get today. 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Get the debt relief now. Loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender. NMLS 166-1781 on approved credit. NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
How tough was it to process the fan displeasure here tonight, considering what you just said?
Yeah, I mean, passion is a significant word amongst this fan base, and it's really special. And, feel their disappointment. It's tough. Never want to see the jerseys on the ice. But, we know we just didn't play well enough.
That was Maple Leafs forward John Tavares after the Maple Leafs were eliminated last night 6-1 at home by the Florida Panthers as the Panthers advanced to the Eastern Conference Final. And I want to read this tweet from Luke Fox, who reports on the Toronto Maple Leafs for Sportsnet. This was at the end of the game last night. A fan threw a beer at the Leafs on the bench. Mitch Marner had to sidestep a thrown jersey before skating to the bench on his final shift as he was getting booed. This is ugly. And Willie, you have taken umbrage with the number of jerseys that ended up on the ice last night at Scotiabank Arena.
I just think that it really feeds on itself in that market. I've never lived there or anything like that. I've always been amused watching the pain year in and year out that happens with that city. It seems unique. You guys tell me how you think it compares to other star-crossed franchises. Like for the longest time in my lifetime, it was the Cubs and the Red Sox, right? And they were slightly different. The Cubs were much more the lovable. They're bad most of the time, and then on the occasion they would be good, and then it didn't happen until 2016. Now we look upon them completely differently. The Red Sox, different kind of pain, usually pretty good, and so many trips to the brink. And then oh my gosh, how in the world did that happen? The Bill Buckner or the Aaron Boone, we can go down the list. And now they've won 4 World Series since then, and it's we look at it completely differently. The Maple Leafs always have been different to me in the way their fans react. It's like I don't know if they expect it. They're so cynical. But the jersey thing really rubs me the wrong way. The jersey thing, I can even see somebody in a rage just firing an empty beer or something like that. It happens. I've seen it happen. The jersey thing is pretty unique, I think, to hockey, especially Toronto. I saw a person throw the jersey, and Adam, I don't know if you were at this game, but the Predators beat a really bad Toronto team that was just about to start tanking to get all the players they have today.
The score was 9-2.
I think it was 8 or 9-2, maybe to 1. But somebody threw the jersey, and it was all over the Canadian media. It was the lead story. I was like, what's this guy doing? But I came to learn that if you go back through history, this is something that they do. But to do that, to me, I started thinking to myself, if that ever happened in a Predator game or a Titans game, I would really be disappointed. I guess practically it probably couldn't happen in a Titans. Could somebody actually? You'd probably have to put a rubber band around your jersey,
close enough,
be able to spiral it from the stands.
Someone in Toronto more than a decade ago threw a box of Eggo waffles onto the ice.
Oh, wow.
I wish I was making that up.
Yeah, somebody scored a goal right while the waffles were on the ice, I think. But
man, come on, man.
But it was during play. But what I don't get about that is, look, I know how heartbroken you are as a fan. But when you throw your jersey on there, that's like implying that the guys aren't trying. Like they just lost to the defending Stanley Cup champion. This is a juggernaut team that they lost to. The Toronto won a big Game 6 on the road to just get to Game 7. I get the devastation in the moment, but to go crazy like these guys are a bunch of bums, I just think that's over the line. I booing, fine. If 1 or 2 people throw a beverage, I don't like that. But to throw a jersey on the ice, like that's the heart and soul. That's the colors. Like, remember the rule in the locker room? Nobody steps on the logo. Nobody steps on our logo in our locker room. You don't do it. That's a big thing. So to me, as a true fan, whoever those fans were who threw the jersey, they'll be back next year.
So y'all couldn't step on your own logo?
No.
In the locker room?
No, nobody can step on the logo.
God, what is wrong with y'all? The locker room only so big.
Sacred.
But the locker room is only so big.
The colors, the jersey means something. You don't throw the jersey on the ice. It's bad.
There was a great philosopher who once said, "This ticket doesn't just give me a seat. It also gives me the right, no, the duty to make a complete ass of myself." That was Homer Simpson, by the way.
Yeah, and Homer was partly right, not all the way.
But I feel like we make excuses for these fans, like, oh yeah, you paid a lot of money.
No, but it's not even
that's
about
not what it's about.
No, it's not even about paying all the money, Willie. It's about in 2021 when they lost 4-3 to the Canadians. It's about 22 when they lost to the Lightning. It's about 23 when they lost to the Panthers. It's about 24 when they lost to the Bruins. It's about now 25 when they lost to the Panthers when they were up in the series.
They were up.
So
Not only were they up 2-0 in the series, they were up 3-1 in Game 3 with a chance to go up 3-0 in the series.
Exactly.
And still got to overtime.
So if I have my jersey at that particular moment and I can't throw anything else, and I'm going to tell you what my mama said. She said, if you ain't got nothing nice to say, don't say nothing at all. But she ain't ever said don't throw nothing. So, with that being said, they had a right to throw their jerseys onto the ice.
Since Austin Matthews debuted in the NHL in 2016.
Austin freaking Matthews.
The Maple Leafs have the third best points percentage in the regular season in the NHL, behind the Bruins and the Lightning. And the Maple Leafs have not advanced past the second round in any of them.
Willie, that's what it's about. That right there. And like I said, my mama ain't never say I couldn't throw anything. They threw their jerseys on the ice. They didn't burn them, Willie.
Let me ask you this question from Nate on our text line. How would you compare the burning of NFL jerseys we have seen in the past to throwing hockey jerseys on the ice?
Well, I think it's different to do that on your own for social media. I don't like it. It's just, but that's just attention seeking. Throwing it on the ice while the game is going on? Come on. It's next level.
Maybe they're thinking if I throw you my jersey, some of my luck will wear off on you.
Do they think it's going to help? Like,
well,
I need to deliver the message.
Help. Willie, them cheering
I feel
didn't
like there's
help.
a mentality in Canada that is even stronger of, this is not acceptable. I got to deliver the message.
They're like Kentucky
this
fans.
Isn't good enough.
They're like Kentucky fans. Like Duke fans.
I agree. But there's something
I haven't
even
thrown
more
anything on the court.
But Duke fans think them in Kentucky think they invented basketball. Okay,
I may be wrong. I've never seen Kentucky fans throw stuff on the.
They probably would if they didn't get thrown out.
Not jerseys.
If they didn't get thrown out, they probably would.
I think Eddie Olczyk was doing color for the game. And when he saw the jersey thrown on the ice, this was on the TNT broadcast. He was basically saying that the security at the arena should issue vigilante justice to whoever it was. It's like, take him under the bleachers and have a conversation with him, but there may not be much talking.
No, I mean, listen, would I have done it if I was a fan? No, I wouldn't have done it, but I would rather them throw my jersey on the stand, on the ice, than to sit there and berate me as I'm walking through, calling me all night. And I would rather them just do that as their silent protest, throw it on the ice, and walk out the building. I would rather that than to hear all of the stuff that you know is coming because they're frustrated.
Okay, that's a good point. You brought that up in the text chain. So when you say getting heckled or berated, are you saying from the stands to the bench while the game's going on?
Yeah, from the stands to the bench
the game
and hanging out. Hanging out, because players, we got to walk out, and if we're home, we got to walk to our cars.
Mason,
so yes, exactly.
You're a bum.
Exactly.
You're a pigeon.
I've been called a lot of things without a pigeon. No. But I would rather them as their silent protest.
I feel like
throw the jersey.
You'd rather have them throw the jersey.
Yeah, just throw the jersey.
I don't agree with that.
I just throw because I'm not going to see who throws it. I'm not going to see who throws it. But I see who's heckling me because they're walking right. I'm walking right by them.
Skylar says on our text line, wait, were Willie and his teammates walking circles around the logo in the locker room, like totally avoiding any bit of the paint in the middle of the floor?
That used to be, I don't think they do it anymore. I don't think they have the logo in the locker room anymore. But for a long time, the Predators and other teams, it was the media. And Adam, you were part of this era.
Yes.
The media was expected to avoid.
I was very, very, very careful about not even putting the tiniest part of my shoe on that logo.
Yeah,
because certain players would pounce. Now, fortunately, the Predators did the smart thing And when they renovated their dressing room, they put the logo on the ceiling.
Let's
So
see
unless
you
I'm
try
making
to-
a non-issue.
unless I'm dancing on the ceiling,
Yeah.
Oh, it's a good song. Dancing on the ceiling.
Yeah, Lionel Richie.
Yes.
But okay, so the logo as well. What were we talking about in college football? The running after the game and planting the flag and the logo of
But
the other
that's
team.
something
You
different.
know it's going to get a fight going.
Yeah,
it's going to
but
get a
that's
fight
something
going.
different.
So you don't do that to the logo. You don't do that to the colors. And all of those fans in Toronto, they'll be back next year. They're
Yes,
not
but
quitting on the.
So that's right.
So
So they
don't
have a
do it in the moment.
Man, they're mad, Willie.
Be
They're
mad.
upset.
Be mad. That's
They
okay.
throw
Being
their
mad is
and you
different.
know what? They're going to regret that they threw their jersey down.
those
But that's
jerseys
them.
aren't cheap.
Yes.
To me, it's karma. It's karma. You're making it even worse. You're going to make it. I think that the players
team
in
is
that
making it karma.
franchise, the media and the fans make it harder on that franchise than maybe any other franchise. Maybe more so than Kentucky basketball, or more so than wherever you want to rank the top passionate fans. The negativity and the pressure that is extra put on that. And you know who said it after the game? Brad Marchand, who has been the number one villain. He's got like 5 game 7s. He's been in like 5 of the game 7s that
He's
you
won
just
them all.
listed. D-Days, when you read him off, he's been in a bunch of them.
He's 5-0.
He's 5-0
The Maple Leafs in
in
his
game
career in
sevens.
Game 7.
And he's been a great player in all of them. And he was egging it on, but he mentioned, he goes, this team I'm on, right? He was talking about the Panthers. He joined them at the trade deadline, and he's seeing a great team. He said, now that team has faced some real pressure. They were up 3-0 in the final last year, blew it. Oilers won 3 straight games. They're on the verge of doing something just devastating, blowing a 3-0 lead in the final. They recovered and won game 7. So he was like, this team knows how to deal with pressure. That's been pressure. This really wasn't a big pressure game for the Panthers because they had been through other pressure. He said, but then I look over at the Maple Leafs and I look at the pressure being put on them for this game. Way more pressure was on the Maple Leafs than on the Panthers for game 7 because of the extra negativity the media and the fans do because of the history.
No, Toronto calls this. They've lost 7 game 7s the last 5 years, Willie. They've done this. Don't blame it on the fans. They did this. There is an action, then there's a reaction.
It's a different thing up there. It's another level.
615-737-1025. What are the acceptable methods of fan protest? Is jersey tossing okay? What about waffle throwing, which also happened in Toronto? Is that okay? What are the acceptable methods of fan protest?
And let me add a second question. This is what I would really be curious.
Okay.
What do our listeners think? By being negative and booing and throwing jerseys, extreme stuff, do you think that helps the team? Do you think that forces the team to be better?
Okay. Answer both of those questions at 615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven
or
by
does
Wilson
the opposite
County
happen? It makes it worse. I think it makes it worse.
This week's Nashville's best deal is Beach Bend Park and Splash Lagoon with a buy one, get one free admission. Beach Bend Park and Splash Lagoon, where parking, tubes, and sunscreen are always free. Get this great deal now at thegamenashville.com/deals while supplies last.
Happy Monday, everyone. This is Derek Mason, and you heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff over at Cool Springs MD for some time. If you set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time setting a resolution to shed some extra pounds only to face disappointment. But listen, I got some news for everyone, including myself, because at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands the frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss. Listen, I am going through this as well, people. So you're not you wouldn't be the only person. I'm trying to drop some extra pounds. So I'm going to Cool Springs MD this Wednesday to go through the whole thing to see what the doctors have to say in order for me and what program they're going to put me on. So I too can lose a couple of extra pounds. And I know they will tell you about their comprehensive weight loss plan, which is led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain. with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you and you only. And that is why I'm going, because I need a program for me and me only. So connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
D. Mason, Vingan and Donick, 1025, 1063 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you, talking about acceptable forms of fan protest, because Willie does not like how Toronto Maple Leafs fans toss jerseys onto the ice. Let's go to Ben.
I draw the line. No tossing the jersey.
Let's go to Ben on our phone line, driven by
Beer,
Wilson County.
okay. Eagles,
Beer's
I'll
fine.
deal with it.
Ben, please go ahead.
Hey, guys. Good morning. Can you hear me fine?
Yes.
All right. I think that's a complicated thing, right? Because personally, I would never do it, but, I think that from the perspective of the opposing team, you'd love it because you know that you got to that fan base, that your team got to that fan base. So I think it's a really complicated question because from a personal perspective, like I said, no matter how bad my team let me down, I think back to those old Knicks teams that before this year, how they wore the bags on their heads. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So even those guys never tossed their jerseys. So, that's my opinion on it. I think it just depends on which side of the fence you're on. I'll hang up, and thanks for taking my call.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ben. They
Ben,
went from the Icks to the Knicks.
Yeah,
they went back to the Knicks.
Right, the Icks. And then there was the first one I remember was the Aints. Remember the Saints who threatened to go 0-16. They did win a game, and they beat, unfortunately, the Jets.
I remember the Titans fan,
the team I was rooting for,
who went to the final game of the season against Houston wearing a paper bag over his head with a picture of Shedeur Sanders on it. How times have changed since then.
Exactly.
The paper bag thing is fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
Would you rather see a bunch of paper
jersey.
bags in your I think that's more demoralizing than anything.
Well, let me read this text from Trey, because I think this is an interesting point. Trey texted and says, I'm a strong believer in fans needing to make a statement during games in order to get things changed. Not that the statements made by the fans will change how the players play, but if the ownership group and the front office management are embarrassed on national TV by jersey throwing, empty seats, boos, etc., it can lead to action being taken. Needs to be used very tactfully, or else you end up like Titans fans who force Amy to make knee-jerk reactions to save face, i.e. John Ross.
See, this one is
interesting mindset.
This one is a little bit different because Toronto has been a good team during the regular season.
Yes.
So that's the unique part about this, that they've been good. So it's not like you're throwing your jersey because they've just been historically bad as an organization. It's when you get in the playoffs. Now the frustration has boiled over so much that I don't hate my team, but I hate this moment, and I'm going to throw my jerseys to show you how much I hate the moment because you've disappointed me the last 4 to 5 years. So I don't think it's so much of them because they love their team during the year.
I do think that what was his name that just texted that? I forgot. Trey makes a good point that I think that is the mindset of the fan a lot of times. I've got to show the ownership that we're checked out on this team or this coach, etc. They're usually not checked out. The fans aren't checked out permanently. They just want to see change. Yeah,
they're closed for temporarily closed.
But it's also kind of be careful what you wish for, because one of the unique things that will be going on in Toronto is they have what's called the core four, right? They've had these 4 guys that have made up the lion's share of their salary cap for the last chunk of games that we're talking about, and they've lost all these game 7s, and they have not made a deep run. And they're likely to lose at least 1, if not 2, of the core 4 this year. So are you saying by throwing your jersey, you want to see the core 4 broken up? Okay. Who are you going to bring in?
But that shouldn't
Who are you going to bring in?
But my thing is, the fan, they're disappointed because they know exactly what you're talking about. They know that, hey, listen, we got a window, and this window is going to close eventually. So we need to win now. They're throwing their jersey on the ice to show their displeasure, I think, with the organization, and saying something needs to change because it hadn't worked in the last 4 or 5 years with the guys that we have.
Let me put it in this perspective, Willie. And I heard Elliot Freeman, who joins us every Thursday, talking about this on his latest episode of the 32 Thoughts podcast. The Washington Capitals in the Alex Ovechkin era, which is 20 years, have made it past the second round one time. But guess what happened that one time? They won the Stanley Cup. Toronto Maple Leafs fans can't even say that, right? And I'm sure Toronto Maple Leafs fans...
They made it past the second round?
The Capitals.
It's in the Ovechkin era?
Have made it past the second round one time.
Past the second round?
Yes, one time.
So they've often won the first round, but the only time they won the second round was when they won the Cup?
That's what Elliot said. Wow. And I'd have to go back and double check that, but I trust Elliot's
I think you're probably right. They made the finals
in 2018.
In 2018, and they made the finals pre-Ovechkin.
Yes, in 1998.
Which was the last year before the Predators existed. Mm-hmm. And the David Poile era was filled with playoff appearances that did not make runs.
But my point is that Maple Leafs fans would take that right now versus what they're getting. You can get past the second round once in 20 years, but that one time you will win the championship.
You better win one.
That's also a unique thing. And I think Braves fans, if you're a baseball fan and you have been a Braves fan for a long time, that was a knock on the Braves. so often making the playoffs, but not being able to cash in and win the whole thing. Now they've won it twice now, so I think they're sort of out of that club. Or obviously the Bills and the Elway Broncos before Elway's teams broke through at the end. Made it to the Super Bowl but didn't win it. There's something like you don't appreciate how good the team is because of the playoff lack of success.
Do you, or either one of y'all, would y'all compare them more to the Cowboys than to say Buffalo or anybody else? Because
I think there's some
the Cowboys had their championships, but they were perennial playoff teams, but couldn't advance past the first round.
It feels more like the Bills because
the Bills got to the Super Bowl. Exactly.
Oh, that's true.
Four straight years. Cowboys.
The Cowboys haven't been.
Yeah.
Have they been to the Final Four? Have they been to an NFC Championship game in a long time? So I think there's some parallels there with an enormous, passionate fan base.
Exactly.
By my incredibly quick,
but I don't think
Google
the Cowboys
research,
fans.
The Cowboys have not appeared in an NFC title game since 1995.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got to go back to Troy Aikman. So, do you think Cowboy fans are as negative as Maple Leafs? I don't think so. I think the Maple Leafs fans are a different breed with the jersey throwing and stuff that goes on. I don't get it.
Let me ask this question for Derek, because we do have a question from Brian on our text line. He says, Derek, as a former pro, and I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but can you hear the crowds boo and talking from the fans when you're on the field?
It just depends. It depends. Like if I'm on the field, like I know I can't hear when I'm playing unless I go closer to the sideline and I'm sort of engaging. But when you're on the field, no, everything sounds muffled, but then there gets to a point where you don't hear absolutely anything. It's the weirdest thing. You don't hear anything.
What's the closest experience you have in terms of your team disappointing the fans and hearing it from the fans? What's the closest experience you've had to maybe what the Maple Leafs are experiencing? Not
throwing jerseys. I don't think a team that I played with ever got to that point. Even our bad Titan years.
You never got really mad at a group of fans?
No, because you got to understand, you were here, Willie. Our bad seasons is when we were injured.
Yeah.
And everybody knew it. 04, we were injured. Was it 04 or 03? It was one of the 2 years. 04, everybody was injured.
And the one was, I think it was 2001.
We had some injuries, a lot of injuries then. But when we were healthy, for the most part, we were a perennial playoff team. So even now, okay, when we were in Memphis, we may have experienced somewhat. Why? Because there was a detachment from Memphis fans to us. And that was just a weird thing. Yes, that was weird in itself. But there was no team that I went to. Because even when I went to the Jets, they had just come off of 2 AFC championship appearances. So even when I went to the Jets, it wasn't like that. Then I got traded to Houston. They were a good team at the time. So I never experienced. The closest I came to that was in Memphis. And it wasn't because it was just because they knew we were not staying there. So I don't feel what the Maple Leafs fans feel.
I mean, Willie had to endure the Yankees coming out on top of the Subway Series this weekend. He's still wearing his Mets hat, though.
Yeah. I gotta stay in the trenches. I gotta stay in the trenches. You can't win them all. 2 out of 3 for the Yankees. And the Mets beat the Yankees all 4 last year, but the Yankees ended up in the World Series. So I'm hoping I'm not going to get too tied up.
You mentioned the Cowboys, and I know it's completely performative, but Skip Bayless, who is a noted Cowboys fan, when things don't go well, he posts these ridiculous videos on social media where he walks into the kitchen and throws his jersey in the garbage. I'm sure after the camera stops, he pulls it back out.
Didn't Cowboy fans burn Ezekiel Elliott's jersey or something? Cowboy fans, they did something with a burning of a jersey, but not too long ago.
Bayless is doing it for performance and for
completely
clicks,
performative.
and he did it as a writer too, because he covered those teams, right? So he used to talk about the Black Mondays and stuff, like when your season ends, you lose in the divisional round or something. He loved to twist the knife, and that does egg on the fans, I think. So the media's role does have a role. Like I think there are some media markets that are much more negative or inflammatory than other markets. Would you agree, Adam?
Yes.
And so I think as Dallas has got some of that, but I think Toronto is on a level. It might be worse than you mentioned Kentucky basketball. I'm trying to think of other rivals. The New York media is famous. Chicago, maybe to a degree. Boston with the Red Sox is pretty inflammatory. But Toronto might be number one.
Yeah, Cowboy fans, they burn. It don't matter.
Here's a headline from January.
Dak Prescott jerseys and everything.
Here's a headline from January 2023. Cowboys fans ridiculously burned Dak Prescott jerseys, destroyed TVs after playoffs loss.
See? So would you rather somebody throw your jersey on the ice?
I'm okay with that.
You're okay with them burning the jersey and breaking TVs?
On your own time, in your own place.
On your own time.
But while the game is going on,
they're not hurting anybody.
You can't throw a jersey.
But they're not hurting anybody.
It could.
The jersey's soft. What's gonna happen? I guess if it get caught in their skates.
Right. Good. You could
or you throw it over his face.
Trip over it. You can trip over it.
So
hurt yourself.
If somebody throws it, hit your face.
To me, it's the jersey. You throw the jersey on the ice while the game is on. That is next level. It's over the line.
That's right. That's how angry and just uninspired I am with this team. I'm gonna throw my jersey on the ice.
What also doesn't,
even if I didn't have even if I didn't have a shirt on under it, I would throw my jersey on the ice.
I was listening to the Maple Leafs announcers, the radio announcers, because I was driving home from Ohio, and they're describing this. And on one hand, they're saying, "Man, what idiot is doing this? Like, how can you do that?" And on the other hand, they're like, but I understand. Well, this is, I understand why you would be mad. I just don't think you can justify that at all. It's got to be you cannot do that.
615-737-1025. We will continue to take your thoughts on acceptable forms of fan protest on our phone and text lines, 615-737-1025. But coming up next, how could Cam Ward's multi-sport background help him in the long run? I stumbled across an interesting study that I want to share with all of you, and some interesting comments from Chase and Big Joe last week with Tom Glavine that I think ties all of this into a nice, neat little bow. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063 The Game. D. Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Before we get to our next topic, one texter says, so it's okay to throw hats and dead carcasses on the ice to show support, but it's not okay to show disapproval with a jersey or sweater.
100%.
I'm with them.
I'm not for anybody throwing things on the ice while the puck's in play, but a celebratory thing that's been accepted, the hat trick, he's referring to the hat trick.
And the throwing of the catfish.
The catfish, which was the answer to the octopus, which was the first. And now there are rats, in Florida because they're
plastic. Don't worry.
Plastic rats. Yeah. There's a story behind that. And you're like, Panthers? What's the deal with the rat? But there is a story about a rat in a locker room.
In the dressing room. And Scott Mellenby used it as a puck and slap-shotted it.
Oh, wow.
I think is what happened. But the rat became sort of a rallying cry for the Panthers at the early portions of their franchise.
But those are celebratory. I just think my argument is based on one thing. The jersey is sacred. And I can forgive throwing beer or throwing the usual things. I mean, sometimes you see like a hot dog thrown on the ice, or as Adam mentioned, Eggo waffles.
Indeed.
I can forgive that more than the jersey. When you lose your mind over a bad call or you're protesting your team's play. But when your team stinks it out, nobody knows it more than them. They know they stunk it out. It's not like they showed up to the rink. You know what? I'm going to stick it to these fans. I'm not going to try.
Well, Toronto might as well have said that, right? They came out and was flat, completely flat.
They were flat. And you know what? It's not the first time nor the last time that it's going to happen in a Game 7.
So I should
the Denver Nuggets
jersey.
It wasn't
it's
in front of the home fans,
Willie. The jersey is sacred.
So don't throw it.
No, so you shouldn't play bad in the jersey in a Game 7 for the 5th year in a row. So you should take it as the jersey being sacred. No, make that puck sacred, okay?
Man, if you ever start throwing a jersey on the ice, I'm gonna blow up to you and say we're gonna have some words.
Sounds like an awesome.
I might have to be separated.
Sounds like an awesome intermission report on FanDuel Sports Network. Really, Donick confronts Derek Mason.
I wonder if anybody last night in Toronto who was like me blocked somebody from throwing it, when Terrell Owens ran to the Star in Dallas, and Woodson. Then Woodson ran and tackled him. I would have been Woodson. I wonder if anybody was doing a Woodson last night and just tackling a fan before they released the jersey, like the quarterback's getting set. You're getting ready to throw the jersey, and pow!
A lawsuit. I guess it would have been worth
throwing that jersey.
I guess it would have been worth it in a sense. So go ahead. I mean,
so last week, Chase and Big Joe were in Atlanta, and they had Tom Glavine on the program, former New York Met too, if I'm not mistaken. Right, Willie Donick?
Who's that?
Tom Glavine.
Yes, Tom Glavine was a Met.
Forget the time with the Braves. We're only going to talk about the time with the Mets.
He won his 300th game as a Met, actually.
There you go.
Yeah.
So Big Joe asked Tom Glavine about the benefit of young athletes playing multiple sports. I thought he had an interesting response. And then I started thinking about it in the context of Cam Ward. Here is Tom Glavine last week on the Chase and Big Joe show.
You ask any professional athlete in any sport, if they want their kid playing one sport year round, they'll tell you, hell no. They want them playing as many sports as they can and experience everything they can and find out what they like. Now, I understand at some point in time, you have to, or you might have to. I mean, I say that knowing that even for me, I played hockey and baseball all my life, and I didn't have to decide until the day I signed with the Braves. So it can be done. You can play multiple sports. I just think that we're in a day and age now where I think a lot of it is generated by coaches or by these travel programs that feed on the emotions of the parents to make them think, well, if your kid's not playing year round, the kid down the street is, and he's going to be better than your kid. And what parent's not going to look at that emotionally and go, oh, well, I have to do everything I possibly can for my kid to make it. Because
Right.
everybody, let's face it, everybody thinks their kid's going pro, right? Of course they're not, but that's what everybody thinks. And so I think a lot of it is just the emotions that the parents have, and they just don't know any better. They just think, well, this is what I have to do or what I'm supposed to do. And who doesn't want to give their kid the best chance to be successful?
That was Tom Glavine on with Chase and Big Joe last week. And I was thinking about it in the context of Cam Ward, because Cam Ward has a multi-sport background. You've heard the story many times. He was a 0-star recruit in football, received 1 Division I scholarship to Incarnate Word, and developed into the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft. But Cam Ward, he played a lot of different sports. He dabbled in baseball. He even threw discus, which I learned over the weekend. But his first true love was basketball, actually. His senior season at Columbia High School, Cam Ward in 20 games averaged 20.6 points per game, 4.6 rebounds per game, 3.3 assists per game, and 2.6 steals per game. And Eric Morris, who was the coach at Incarnate Word, who offered Cam Ward his only Division I college scholarship, said this, quote, "We were really sold on him when we saw him play basketball. He's the all-time leading scorer in West Columbia history. You could see him communicate at a high level and see space. You could see his competitive nature come out, which is one of his greatest strengths." In a little bit, we're going to talk about a study that they stumbled on in terms of NFL quarterbacks who were multi-sport athletes and how that correlated to success in the NFL. But Willie, what did you think of Tom Glavine's comments there?
I thought of Cam Ward, and I think a lot of parents out there probably need to listen closely to Tom Glavine and what he said, because he touched on the key point that you have to be willing to do. And as we'll talk about with the studies will show that there is a long-term benefit. You're going to be better in your eventual best sport if you spend more time playing multiple sports. But Tom Glavine mentioned the dilemma that a lot of families get involved with, and the kids are too young to really understand it. He mentioned the kid down the street who is specializing. He's getting the special batting lessons. He's getting the tutelages, the pitching lessons, or he's going to a special shooting coach. He's playing year round. That kid in the short term often does get ahead. And you're sitting there going, what? It's more fun to play more than one sport. I think it's the right thing to play more than one sport. But I've got the coach telling me, well, Derek, your son's pretty good, but, or your nephew or your niece, they're pretty good, but I can't promise them a spot next year. But we got the fall. We're going to have some fall training, and if you just pay $500, whatever it is, you're going to be on the team. Then I think you got a better chance. Like, there's pressure. You get pulled towards one sport, and you have to be willing to look long term, which is not always easy at all. Because a lot of these travel programs do want to take your money year round.
Yeah.
And it's kind of for the right reason, but it's kind of also not for the right reason.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is the coaches doing, because me as a parent in growing up, it was, when you have older brothers, it's play all sports. At least for me, it was play all sports. Find a sports you enjoy, play them, have fun. But then eventually, if you're that good of an athlete, eventually you'll narrow it down in high school to about 2 sports, maybe even 3 sometimes, depending on, because track and baseball kind of coincided together. And if we had dual meets at track, some guys would, go and pitch and then come back over and do like a long jump or something, and then go back over. That used to
be a lot more common.
Because we're playing so close together. It's hard to do it now. But I think a lot of it is led and pushed by the coaches. I think if you're like Glavine said, if you talk to a parent or a former person, a former player, I think their first inclination is, no, play all sports, play them all, do what you do. And eventually you'll sort of gravitate to the sports you are better at. Like my son, he played football. He ran track. He played lacrosse for a little bit. He played soccer. So he played a sort of a gamut of sports.
Yeah, I bet that was more fun.
Yeah, it was fun
than the
too.
person that just plays one sport.
Because it allowed it. What I found is this. Because every sport sort of has its sort of specialty in a sense. and when it comes to your body. I think when you play all sports, you're able to balance your body out.
That's the key.
Basketball. You see, what you don't see is this, and we will talk about this, I know. What you don't see a lot of times, it's specialized positions, quarterbacks, maybe goalie. Those guys typically pitchers. Those guys typically either stay with the sport or they will go to like quarterbacks will go to pitching. Pitchers are play quarterback. Why? Same movement, everything else. It's easier for that transition. If you're a good pitcher, they figure you already got a good arm, so you can be a quarterback. But you don't like wide receivers and defensive backs. We play baseball, we run track, we play basketball. You know, the big fellas, the D line, they usually run track, or if they're playing football, they usually run track or they'll play basketball because it gives them different movements. And to me, why wouldn't you want that as a head coach?
All right, so let's bring it back to Cam Ward, because I think that's something that everybody's going to be focused on here is how will Cam Ward continue to grow and one of the reasons that he was the first pick was the dramatic improvement he made from the time he set foot in Incarnate Word to the end of his career on his third school at Miami. And I would argue that part of the reason that he had so much room for improvement is because in his formative years in high school, he did stick to, and I would be curious to know someday, you know, about his mindset back then of when it was time to focus on playing quarterback, and maybe some times where he wasn't on the radar as the big time recruit, but he continued to play basketball, and how that might be benefiting him now, because that's the key. Is number one, you don't have the stress-related injuries by working the same muscle groups over and over and over. And you have this wide range of experiences that do translate and help the other sport. One sport helps the other. I believe in that philosophy. But in the short term, I'm sure Cam Ward fell behind. If he had specialized in playing quarterback in high school, he might have been recruited by more Division I teams, in theory, right? But he was a late bloomer because he continued to play basketball and discus, and that was taking his time away. How many times? I guarantee you it happens around here, especially because football has all the Friday night lights. They get the biggest crowds at the game. It's the biggest deal at school. As a kid maybe said, you know what? I'd like to play baseball. And the football coach goes, well, you're going to miss spring practice if you play baseball. Oh, well, that's all right, right? I'll just come out in the fall when we start practice. But, you know, spring practice, you know, we got another quarterback that's going to be taking all the reps. You got to be strong enough
to say
and
no.
talented enough.
Yeah, you have to be
to say, you know what, I'll still beat that guy out. I want to play baseball. And the experience, a good football coach will say, yeah, play baseball. We'll figure it out. I want the multi-sport athlete. I want those experiences. Help the school's baseball team. I that's too often not the mentality. The football coaches, I think, sometimes get in their own world that, hey, it all revolves around my team, and I got to have all my guys here all the time instead of encouraging them to play other sports.
Is it to me, it was, at least from the football aspect of it, when I was in high school, it was because my coach would tell me he didn't really want me playing basketball. He felt I would get, for some reason, he just thought I would get injured on the basketball court, and you know, not be able to sort of play. So he would always tell me not play basketball, but he never told me not to run track. Why? Because there's a direct correlation between track and football.
But don't you think basketball?
I get you with that.
Surprised he didn't see that.
I get you with that, but he was so anti-basketball because he just thought in the fall, I mean, in the spring you get hurt, then we can't have you for track and all this other stuff. Whereas track, he saw a sort of, there was something there that he can see tangible that translates from track to football or football to track, that he saw that he just wanted, because I want fast guys on the track and that translates to football. I don't know how much in his mind he figured basketball or baseball would translate to football, but he didn't care if he ran track. One, he was track coach too, so that's another thing. But
that's the hard part for a coach is, you have to, sometimes there's a little bit of self-serving, right?
Yeah, it's like I'm worried about me and my team. But if you're coaching another sport, then now you got the dilemma of, okay, which one should I don't mind him being a pitcher, but do I want him to do how much will he pitch? Or do I even want him to play pitcher, even though he may be a good pitcher?
His arm,
might hurt his arm. Exactly. Absolutely.
615-737-1025. Your thoughts on multi-sport athletes and the benefits of young athletes playing multiple sports. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, we will hear from Cam Ward himself on how his basketball playing days helped him play quarterback. And we have a study. I'm going to give a shout out to the doctor as well, who provided the study to me, that really looks at how important being a multi-sport athlete is to playing quarterback at the NFL level. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Fingan, 1025-1063, The Game.
So quarterback wise, I know Joe Burrow was a big hooper before he, became what he became as a quarterback, kind of a late blooming type of quarterback, really more of a basketball player for a while. How do you feel that playing basketball at a high level like you did, instead of just, training just only dropbacks and only football stuff, how do you think that helped your football game playing basketball like you did?
Just moving your body different ways, especially in football. Football is more about angles than a lot of stuff outside the pocket. If someone takes a bad angle, they've already lost. Like speed is a big thing, but like people who have track speed can't translate to football speed. It's different. So I'll say just the way that, I can get, my body to move a certain way. Then also being just, being able to throw from different angles. That's why I think the baseball helped me. So, I feel like just every sport that I played growing up, led me to being, end up being a good athlete.
That was Cam Ward on Miami's Storm Sessions podcast last year, talking about how his multi-sport upbringing, particularly in basketball, helped him develop as a quarterback. What did you guys think of that response from Cam Ward?
I found that really interesting. It falls right in line with what Tom Glavine was saying. And I think if you talk to a lot of professional athletes, they all will say the same thing, that one helps the other. You heard him reference two different sports. Being able to change your arm angle a little bit. That's something that you do in baseball from time to time, depending what position you play, right? Pitching is not about that. You want to repeat the same arm angle for the most part. But like a shortstop or a first baseman, outfielder, you're going to throw the ball a little bit different. That can translate. And he talked about the angles, the movement, what you learn on the basketball court definitely translates and helps you with football. I think there are certain coaches. Tim Corbin is one that I know for sure. He really seeks out multi-sport athletes with recruits. He doesn't really like the specialized one. He thinks they're more likely to get hurt, number one. And number two, he likes the well-rounded athlete.
I think you understand, one, at least for a quarterback, you understand the dynamics of each locker room. Because, yes, we're all guys in one locker room, or they're all females in one locker room. There's still a dynamic between each locker room. Football locker room may be different from a basketball, baseball, baseball, hockey. So when you are a quarterback on a football team, a lot of times that translates to you being a point guard, on the basketball court, or a pitcher or shortstop, on the diamond. I don't think it ever translates into hockey necessarily, but there are other sports that being a quarterback sort of translate. That's why I think basketball for him was great. Why? Because not only angles, but it allows you to sort of know how to generate the offense, or how to tell guys to make sure they understand where they're going. You're scoping the whole landscape of sort of the basketball court as you do the football field. He said angles. Well, okay, this guy, if he cuts here, I could dish the ball here. Football, if he cuts across here, I know where to throw it. So it's all about angles. It's all about controlling the other 4 guys on the basketball field and the other 10 guys on the football field. So those things to me are inherently relatable. And
I never thought about the locker room dynamics, but as you said that, I immediately thought, yes, every sport, the makeup of the team, the size of the team is different. So I think that's a great experience, because what is Cam Ward known for? Leadership, right? Mm-hmm. So he's been in a lot of different locker rooms, different sports. That probably helped him hone leadership skills.
Doug is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Doug, thank you for waiting. Please go ahead.
Hey guys, this is my first time calling, but it's I think it's a great topic. I've been a track coach for 35 years, 25 years at Father Ryan High School, and I see guys come in all the time, and track and field pays such big dividends for the football players and other sport athletes. And not only, speed wise, like as Derek was saying, I mean, my whole goal always is to take these kids and try to make them more athletic or faster and give them back to their primary sport. If it's football, I want this kid to be faster by the time he gets back to football. I want the football coach to get him in the summer and be like, man, you've got another gear right now. And then it gets down to also what people don't take into account with track and field is that, these kids are competing in individual events where a lot of times they're competing in team sports that it's not all on them. When you're running the 100, it's just you out there. So you've got to compete. And I think that brings a whole different mental dynamic to it where football coaches, they like to see a guy out there that's going to get out there and compete. I think wrestling does the same thing for a lot of these kids.
You're right. Thank you, Doug.
Call,
Appreciate
Doug.
He's right about that. He hit that because track is really outside of like, tennis and golf, where we know that's just a truly individual sport. But track and field is probably one of the most individual sports out there, outside of the 4x4, 4x2, 4x1, because everything is
it's
done.
Got a bit of a team dynamic.
Yeah, it has a team because of the points.
Yeah,
but
you got to do your thing by yourself.
Exactly. It's you. Your team can't help you when you're running 100. Your team can't help you advance to the next round. If you don't win, you don't get there. If you don't place, you don't get there. So what track allowed me, it was one of the sort of the avenues that allowed me, along with just having older brothers, but that was another avenue that allowed me to be competitive. Why? Because the 400, it was he and I. The 200, it was he and I. The 100, it was he. The long jump, the high jump. I wasn't competing against your team. I was just competing with you. And when you're in that competition in the 400, that last 100 yards, everybody that knows and ran the 400, you know about the last 100 yards. You getting that last 100 yards, that's when you find out how much of a competitor you truly are.
I stumbled across this article from 4 or 5 years ago. Drew Henson, who famously played for the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Yankees, a Michigan man.
In fact, was he not
just the
there?
State of Michigan?
I feel like he was there with Tom Brady at some point. I think there was a crossover.
Was that Henson?
Drew
I
Henson.
think he was. I think he was.
So the story was about Patrick Mahomes, because famously Patrick Mahomes' dad played professional baseball. Patrick Mahomes played some baseball. And this was the quote from Drew Henson in the story. Quote, "The game is played in the pocket, but it's played in a way that you're seldom getting a perfect throwing setup. Movement and muscle memory that you develop in other sports has a direct correlation to playing the quarterback position," the story says. "What might separate the single sport from multi-sport athletes," emphasized Henson, "is the ability to adapt and improvise when things go off script. The capability to throw from multiple arm angles or make plays when you have windows that you get the ball there as quickly as possible. Those skills are enhanced on the baseball diamond or basketball court." Quote, "There's rarely a perfect setup on the play where you don't have some sort of athletic movement that's unrehearsed."
Interesting stuff. And for those that don't remember, Patrick Mahomes' dad was a Major League Baseball pitcher, Pat Mahomes, for the Mets, among other teams. But so that is a good backdrop. I love that philosophy. I think that's true, because that in some sense goes against the refining that a lot of quarterbacks do, because you do need the repeat of the delivery, the rhythm, but the ability to do that, but also improvise a little bit, change the angle when necessary, is also a very important step. You need both.
We have a different Doug on our phone line, driven by Wilson County, Hunter.com. What are the odds? This Doug from Nashville. Please go ahead.
Hey, I'm Doug from Nashville, piggybacking on Doug from wherever, the track guy. I have to say that
Father Ryan, apparently.
Father Ryan, as a track guy, I enjoyed track simply because it wasn't a team sport. It was an individual sport. You take my 10-100 was good in Pennsylvania, California, Georgia, wherever. When you seen that 10-1, it didn't matter who I competed against. It was my 10-1 versus everybody else's 10-1 across the nation. So I appreciated that. I also appreciate the fact that it made me faster as a football player, because, we always say backfield was the track field. The track field is the backfield. So that's the way we play that. So I do like the individual part, because I never felt like I was competing in track against another team. I was competing against the whole wide world in my time.
You're right. I enjoyed running track. I really did. If I felt I could have competed in college, like at that level, the top level, I would have continued to run track. But my speed sort of cut off at high school. And after that, like, all right, you ain't fast. You ain't like they're fast. You're all right. But I just think, parents should always encourage their kids to play multiple sports, regardless what the coaches are saying. To me, because it's all about a burnout factor too.
The burnout is a big factor.
You don't want your kid to get to a point where they're just burned out on one particular sport, and it's like, man, can we just stop for a while? You don't want your kid to get to a point. You want he or she to be able to go across the board if they can compete. I'm not asking you to throw them in lacrosse if they don't know how to compete in lacrosse. I'm saying if they play football, then let them run track. If they can play basketball, let them run track. Let them do all these other sports that will ultimately, I think, enhance them as an athlete, period, not just in that particular, but eventually there has to be okay, how much attention are we paying to these sports? When you get in high school, 10th, 11th grade, 12th grade, then it's more so we probably need to narrow it down to two sports.
I think that's where you probably start making decisions. I know that was where I was going
so
from
two
3
sports
to 2. But I also think this, and Tom Glavine mentioned it. Everybody thinks your kid's going to get a scholarship or make the pros when they're right in the middle of it, 3rd, 4th grade. Every game seems like the biggest game ever. It's hardest for the parents. I went through it. I definitely had that. But Tom Glavine makes the point. The long term, if you're destined, if your kid loves to play and is destined for greatness, they will make it. Whether they even if they don't play on the quote top team when they're a 3rd grader, the elite team or the premier team, there's always that. My son made the premier team. Aren't we great? Oh no, my daughter didn't make the top team. The world is over. Yeah. We got to change teams. We got to go to another place where she can play the premier. That shouldn't be what it's. You have to resist that. Resist that. Play all the sports. Or we got to get it. We got to get them extra lessons. Resist. Play all the sports. Try. Tom Glavine hit it. Find out what they like. They might like another sport that doesn't involve, what you're thinking in that moment when you're being pulled in the direction to play one sport. Play the long game. It's not easy. If it were easy, then more people would do it. There probably wouldn't be people making a lot of money with private lessons for real young players or year-round soccer or year-round basketball programs, all of the things.
And I'm not saying you don't need those things.
It's great.
It's great to have
your
them.
Spots, right? But do it in a measured way that incorporates all the sports. And the study that Adam's about to bring up will show that the top end athletes who played more than one sport tend to do better at the highest level.
And we'll get to that study coming up next. 615-737-1025. We'll take your thoughts on multi-sport athletes and the importance of young athletes in the context of Cam Ward. But as Willie mentioned, there is an interesting study I stumbled across over the weekend that puts this into context as well. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. D-Mace, Fingen, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, talking Cam Ward, his multi-sport background, and the benefits of that multi-sport background. And then doing some research for this topic, I stumbled across a study that was conducted. It was published in May of 2022 by multiple physicians, but I do want to give a special shout out to Dr. Sachin Allahabadi, who now works at Houston Methodist Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. He was a part of the study, and he provided a copy of the study to us. So I do want to thank Dr. Allahabadi for doing that. And the study is called National Football League Quarterbacks Who Were Multi-Sport High School Athletes Have Better In-Season Performance Statistics and Career Success. So the objective of this study was to determine the proportion of NFL quarterbacks who are multi-sport high school athletes and whether performance metrics in those quarterbacks differed by playing multiple high school sports versus the single sport of football. And their findings were, they looked at NFL quarterbacks from 1995 to 2020. So that's what, 25 years. Mm-hmm. And they had 403 quarterbacks who qualified. 223 of them, or 55.3%, were multi-sport athletes. And in their findings, as I just said, over half of NFL quarterbacks played multiple high school sports. Multi-sport involvement is associated with benefits in the regular season, including a higher proportion of games played and more touchdowns per game, pass yards per game, and quarterback rating. Playing multiple sports was also associated with playing more playoff games and having more Pro Bowl appearances, MVP awards, and Super Bowl victories. This data supports the benefits of youth multi-sport training. So there was a lot of very complicated algorithms, and I'm not going to do the Jared Stillman thing where I throw this into Chat GPT and attempt to explain it to you. But some really interesting data in here. But Willie, there were a couple of things you noticed in looking through this study that stood out to you.
Yeah, the one that the premise caught my attention. He cited some other studies that did show what we just talked about in the last segment. So just to sort of reinforce that there were short-term gains at the youth sports level by specializing, but there was also an increase in the likelihood of stress-related injuries, arm injuries to a pitcher, wear and tear, stress fracture type of injuries to basketball players, for example, shoulder injuries to football players. When you're just reusing the same muscle groups in the same sport year round, it can burn out those joints and those muscle groups. That's one thing. And that puts aside the mental burnout that often happens by doing the same thing and not shaking up your experiences. So that was one. And then the other part that I thought was really interesting as applies to Cam Ward, that among first-round draft picks, they looked at the study and said from 2008 to 2017, the first-round draft picks, 88% of players played more than one sport in high school. But what was interesting about it was only 55% of the quarterbacks who were drafted in the first round from 2008 to 2017 played more than one sport. So as D-Mace mentioned, sometimes the quarterbacks tend to specialize earlier, but maybe they need to rethink that because the study shows that the quarterbacks who did play multiple sports tend to do better at the NFL level. So only about half of the quarterbacks who were drafted in the first round between 2008 and 2017 played two sports in high school, two or more sports.
I wonder.
Just about everybody else did. Like the football track, the football, basketball, a lot of it makes sense, a lot, but maybe quarterbacks think differently. Maybe quarterbacks should think broader and not worry about, well, I got to go to the Manning camp or I got to go to this 7-on-7
Well, I don't think
camp. I got to stop play. I got to be there for spring football. I got to learn the offense.
I don't think it's the player. I think it's like we've spoken. It's those around the player. It's not necessarily the player. And you only see this at certain positions, whether it be a big man, and if you're over 6'5", they want to keep you in one sport as much as they possibly can. They want to keep you on the basketball court. If you're 6'5", that's where they want to keep you. If you are a quarterback, they want to try to minimize the other sports you do. Why? Because that position, kind of like the pitcher and golf, it's sort of kind of like golf because it's such a specialized position. Everybody can't play it. Everybody can't be a pitcher. Everybody can't be a quarterback. Everybody can't be a golfer. Those are things that I think over time, the more you do it, the better you get, or the more specialized you are in those particular areas, the better you tend to be. Not to say you're going to end up being a Patrick Mahomes or somebody like that, but you may end up being just a tad bit better than the next person because you've solely, concentrated on that one sport. It may happen, it may not. But you see it a lot, I think, in quarterbacks and pitchers, as opposed to every other position outside of those two.
Piggybacking off what Willie shared in that study, or in the study we're referencing, this was another part of the study. Quote, it appears that quarterbacks tend to be more highly specialized relative to other positions in the NFL. The authors posit that due to the highly specific skills required to be a quarterback, in addition to the singular position on a team, athletes may tend to focus earlier for this position compared to a position such as lineman that may require more broad-scaled athletic skills. Nevertheless, it is still important to note that the majority of NFL quarterbacks did not specialize early, indicating that specialization is not critical for achieving elite athlete status in this team sport, concordant with other data from football, from hockey, basketball, and baseball. In contrast, data from Major League Soccer found that early specializers had greater odds of attaining college scholarships.
I think it depends on in soccer may be that outlier, as is lacrosse. Those two sports may be an outlier because I think you have to be like, those two sports are unique. You have to be sort of specialized if you want to, like, scholarships and all that other stuff. If you just want to play,
possibly, yeah.
If you just want to play, just okay. But if you want to be like get a scholarship, I think you have to.
Soccer, I think for sure.
Yeah,
like,
you have to.
Skills are so unique. Hockey would be, I think, similar. If you can't skate, you can't play. So you have to spend enough time skating to develop that specific skill, just like the foot skills and soccer.
Exactly. So those sports are different. But I think it's right that certain positions, and we don't talk about this position at all, but I think kicker and punter are probably the most, if not the sole specialized position in football, because you don't see place kickers like guys that really, and guys, you don't see them playing all these other sports.
Yeah, I would imagine if you're going to play one,
or
soccer.
It would be soccer. That's the only sport
or
that you will
Aussie
play.
rules football, right? We've seen some punters or kickers.
Oh my gosh, it's a phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
The number of punters who come from Australia, it's disproportionate. It's incredible how
or they play golf.
People are actively recruiting the punters because they've got the ability to kick on the run, punt on the run and angle it and things like that, where you don't teach that growing up here. So one point on Ward that I think is important of when you specialize, the earlier you specialize, the earlier you're going to get closer to your maximum potential.
Mm-hmm.
But when you keep your skill set with a variety to it, you have more room to develop as you get older. And so I think that's what is encouraging to me about Cam Ward is he's still learning nuances, I'm sure, about the particulars of playing quarterback, not just with reading the defenses and studying film, but
couldn't that be
just emotions? But he's improving at a more rapid rate because he resisted diving in there and learning all these things when he was in 10th or 11th, or feeling like you had to learn it at 10th, 11th, 12th grade, some of these things.
Now, can that also be sort of like a double-edged sword, in a sense, because you're sort of learning these, for this particular sport, but it also may hurt you in the sense of, I'm looking at you and I'm thinking, well, you've already developed, right? You see what I'm saying? Like you take Cam Ward. I think he gets drafted this high because he still has a lot of people see the talent there,
potential,
To whereas
he hasn't hit his ceiling.
Exactly. If he had been playing all his life, how much better you think people would say he has to go? He's pretty much reached his ceiling. So maybe we need to draft him in the second or third round. That's what happened with guys when they stay a little bit longer in college.
Yep.
It's, well, we've seen you maxed out, so
yeah, he
this
has
is the best
experience,
exactly.
but also he may be further developed, and we might be seeing him closer to the ceiling. That's why I think Ward is a unique blend. He's got a lot of experience,
exactly,
but also I think room to grow.
A couple of texts on this. One texter says playing multiple sports also helps the mental health and the mental ability of the athlete. For instance, when you're at bat, pressure is on you, the focus is on you. I could see how that would help, for instance, a quarterback. I believe there are always things you can learn in one sport that translate into helping other aspects of a different sport.
Yeah, think about how if you've played tennis or golf, and you would think that's the furthest thing from football or basketball in some senses, but get the individual, you get into your own head, the mental toughness you need to succeed at tennis and golf when it's all you and all of the variables that can go wrong on every shot, and the mental discipline and the pressure. I do think if you can be mentally tough in those two sports, it's probably easily translatable to the other sports.
We do have a dissenting voice from Jared from Spring Hill. It's always a Jared.
Oh, wow.
Jared from Spring Hill. Yeah, playing multiple sports helped Cam so much. His best quality is leadership. Like that one quote that came out saying how Titans brass saw Cam Ward swing a golf club and it looked natural, and they likened that to Peyton Manning being good at golf too, and thus we should draft him.
This is all theory, right? None of this means he's going to be great or not. I'm not arguing that. I just think that in a lot of different ways, I'm intrigued by his pathway. And I do think these studies have shown that more often than not, somebody who is a versatile all-around athlete benefits in the long term.
I don't think it necessarily hurts an individual, because listen, if you are an athlete, you're an athlete. If you can play, you can play, and it will it's transferable from sport to sport. But what it does, it gives you the ability, not just from a leadership standpoint, but I think from a play standpoint too on the field. It allows you to be able to use some of those things that you had to use in other sports. Now you're using them in this sport. For instance, we had 2 track guys call and tell us that and I know for 100% sure that it is directly, relatable. Track and football, you get, if you're excelling at football, at track, and you're fast, you're going to excel at least on a high school level. I'm not saying it's going to excel at the college level, but you tend to, if you have any athleticism and can play the game of football, track only helps you because it allows you to get faster.
Now, tell your story, because you are a little bit of an outlier in that you did not play padded football until when?
Until 11th grade.
11th grade. You did not play padded football until 11th grade as a wide receiver. So
didn't think I needed to.
Now, you and I are from a different era. It was different back then, where you were much more likely to play football in football season, basketball in basketball season, then whatever spring sport you play in the spring, and then the summer maybe is when you decide what's my favorite thing. It's different now, right? You're pulled in all these directions now, but you're a good example of, because you played a lot of different things, it didn't hinder your ability to play football when it was time to play football. There's some tight ends, right? Antonio Gates, I know.
He's a basketball player.
Did he play college football?
He played college basketball.
Jimmy Graham played college basketball.
Right, but there are some guys who did not play a single snap of college football that are NFL tight ends.
I think it was Antonio Gates. So he played like his last year or something like that.
Is the guy in the Colts, Mo
Alley Cox?
Mo Alley Cox. Is he who I'm thinking of, who did not play a single snap of college football, just was a basketball player?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
We can look that up.
615-737-1025. Teron Davenport, ESPN NFL Nation Titans reporter, will join us coming up next as we get back into the Titans at 615-737-1025. Willie Darnick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game. D. Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan joined on our phone line, driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com by Teron Davenport, ESPN, NFL Nation, Titans reporter. Teron, we spent the previous hour talking about multi-sport athletes, Cam Ward's background as a multi-sport athlete, and how that could help him in the long run. And doing your research about Cam Ward, getting to know Cam Ward and the people around Cam Ward, how did his multi-sport upbringing help him get to this point?
Yeah, it helps in a variety of ways. You look at the arm angles that he uses, that's a little bit of the background baseball, but then most importantly, one thing that continuously comes out about him is how he's comfortable in space and comfortable with people around him. And that's something that comes from playing basketball. He actually was a pretty good hooper back in high school. And that's something that helps, just that spatial awareness and just getting used to having people around you and moving in that tight, condensed area, right? Because, you take it to the cup, you got to be able to get around people and, find a way to get your shot up without it getting smacked into the stands. And that's something that he was able to do. So those are two areas that really helped him.
Teron, over at ESPN.com, there's a story where I'm not sure who wrote this story, to be perfectly honest with you, but they were looking for the best fits for the remaining free agents or trade candidates in the NFL. And the Titans end up on here with Kazir White, the linebacker, most recently of the Arizona Cardinals. What can you tell us about Kazir White, and could you see a fit with the Titans if he decided that he liked Tennessee?
Yeah, well, that story was written by Matthew Bowen.
Yes, thank you.
And he looked at a fit for all teams. Kazir White, I remember him coming out, and he was a prospect, that a lot of people liked. He was, if I'm not mistaken, was it a second-round pick? Or late, it might even been later.
He was a fourth-round pick in 2018.
Pick. Okay, there you have it right there, a fourth-round pick. Not the biggest guy. He's someone that, you could blitz off the edge. He gives you a little something in coverage, but I don't think that's a move that the Titans need to make, to be honest with you. They got the younger guys there and Cedric Gray as well as James Williams. So I think they'll be good there. And obviously Otis Reese. So to me, it's just more kind of like the same.
Now, Teron, a quick question for you before I ask about the Titans. You're a Met fan, right? And I know Willie's a Met fan. I know why Willie's a Met fan, because he's a New York guy. But I would assume if you're a Met fan, are you a Knick fan too? And I wanted to ask Willie this too, because I hadn't heard him say anything about the Knicks. And the Knicks have found themselves in the Eastern Conference Final. So are y'all just both Mets fans and y'all could care less about, the Knicks or any other team? I know y'all don't care about the Yankees, but outside of other sports, outside of baseball.
Yeah, my first exposure to sports was the Mets. When I lived in New York, I was born in Queens, so naturally a Mets fan, and it just kind of dug into me, and I never let it go. Actually, a small fact about me is my first favorite football team was the Jets. I loved Al Toon and Freeman McNeil. And, the Jets moved from Shea, across the river to New Jersey. And I felt like I thought they abandoned, me, you know what I mean? And so I hated the Jets. The Knicks, I would, if there was a basketball team, if I had to pick a team, it would probably be the Knicks, just because, growing up, Bernard King was a guy that I really, really liked, and then Patrick Ewing. And then I was a Knicks fan, honestly, all the way through the Melo years. But then when they traded Melo, I was just really, really done with them. And so I say, I'm not going to – I don't have any other teams. The Mets are my team. That's the only team I'm going to root for, and that's where we are.
I'm similar to Teron. I moved out of the New York area when I was 12 to Orlando, Florida. That's where I went to high school. So over time, I kind of lost my affiliation to – at different amounts of time, because I grew up watching all the New York teams. That's all you could get. I didn't have cable TV, but all those New York teams were on TV. So I watched them a lot.
Yeah.
But I sort of lost interest over time with everybody other than the Mets.
Mm-hmm.
But the Mets were the one team I've always kept with me from my time that I left New York. So there was a time he mentioned Bernard King. I loved watching Bernard King in his heyday. But by the time I got to, like, it was weird, Orlando, we got the Magic right as I was leaving to come here to Nashville.
Penny Hardaway, then
so
Shaq.
I had
Shaq,
some interest in the
Hardaway.
Magic. So that's where you start moving in different directions in your life, and you sometimes lose affiliation to teams. So I have nothing against the Knicks. I like to see them do well, but I'm not a Knicks fan.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering because both of y'all now know that both of y'all were born, in the New York area. So, but, and this was a question that I, posed to the guys via text, and we'll talk about it some other time. We look at Brian Callahan and we say, listen, this may be a lame duck year for him. And that's unfortunate in a sense of, a lot of Cam's success may be riding on, Cam's success may be riding on whether he keeps his job or not. And maybe that's not the right way to approach it. And you've said that maybe, keeping both of them and letting them develop together works well.
Yeah.
But outside of the head coach, which other position coach do you feel is on a hot seat?
I would say
in regards to the development of their position.
Yeah, I mean, you might as well just put it right to the quarterback coach or to the offensive coordinator. This offense has to do better. They were 17.6 points a game or something like that. It was bad last year. You know what I mean? And so obviously the defense has their warts, et cetera, but I would say, Nick Holtz, Bo Hardigree, like those guys are really under pressure because they're directly tied to Cam Ward. And so it all revolves around number one, in my opinion. And as he goes, the franchise goes. So anybody associated with him, those are the ones that they're on the grill.
So I'm talking about a guy, even though, I'm looking at the tight end position and I'm thinking they need to get more out of this position because I think this is one of the positions that can sort of behind the scene can really help Cam out if this tight end position really takes off and can be an integral part of what they want to do offensively.
Yeah, that's true. And I think a bit of that goes back to the quarterback coach, goes back to the offensive coordinator, because you look at this scheme, it's not really designed for a tight end to have, the 70 to 80 catches, 1,000 yards type of thing. Now, if it happens, that means, a lot of things went right. But I think, it's going to be up to the quarterback coach to help work to Bo Hardigree, to help Cam Ward, to be able to get the ball there. It's going to be up to Nick Holtz and Brian Callahan together. And we talked about the seam routes when I was on last week with Adam, and Jake. Those seam routes, he likes to throw those, right? And so, you got to incorporate that in there. And tight ends, athletic ones, or ones that just know how to get open, or ones that are really tall, like the three guys that the Titans have, in Okonkwo, athletic, Gunnar Helm just knows how to get open, and Wiley, who's 6'6" or so, these guys are built to be used on the seam, so you got to mix that in too.
Talking to Teron Davenport, and Teron, do you think now that they have a look at the rookies, they've got their undrafted free agents they're bringing to camp, are there any other late moves? And I realize that Joe Montana's not sitting on the street, right? Too Tall Jones isn't sitting on the street. Anthony Munoz. But is there a guy or two out there they might now take a look at that at a position group that they think might be an extra guy that could be useful?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that they continue to mention about having a number one pick is also the value of being first in the waiver wire. So I tell you, there's going to be some look, June 1st, you always have the veterans that pop open, pop onto the market. So there could be something there. I don't, off the top of my head, see any ones that say, oh, yeah, that's a Titan signing of the remaining guys. But don't be surprised if there's one, because they've already said they're going to be aggressive. And, again, they have their first in the waiver wire.
it seems like that is going to be an important mindset for Mike Borgonzi, is along this pathway. If you can take advantage of that, every little thing that gives you an advantage as the team on the bottom, and that's one of them, first crack at the waiver wire. If you can just find a couple of hits, maybe not great players, but useful players, you're one mini step closer to being the type of roster you're looking for.
Yeah, I think the Commanders showed a good example of that last year, with some of the guys they hit on. Frankie Louvu, obviously Jaden Daniels drafting him helped everything, but I think they showed how a series of smaller, less glamorous moves can add up to a big one when it all comes together and you find a new guy to drive your ship correctly. And I think that's what they had. The Titans have done some similar things, right? Signing Cody Barton, signing Draymond Jones, bringing in those types of guys, Xavier Woods. And now they went out and they drafted, Cam Ward. So we'll see how all that comes together. Every situation is different, so I'm not directly comparing that to the Commanders, but I think they're a good example of how you can make some small moves that could help out.
Teron, I know we've talked a lot about L'Jarius Sneed and whatever happened off the field, but I'm curious about just his health. Have you talked to him, or have you gotten any reports about how he's coming along from the surgery that ended his season? Can we count on him to be healthy and ready to go when training camp starts?
Yeah, apparently he's ahead of schedule. That's what we've been getting, the last month or so from Brian Callahan. I don't know exactly what he's doing, because he was still in the process of working towards running when I talked to Brian Callahan at the league meeting. But it's still all a work in progress. He's still going through the recovery process. That's something actually we'll probably need to get an update when we talk to Callahan tomorrow at 9:30. So look for that question to be asked.
Now, Teron, you were there, chronicling Brian Callahan's first year, being out there at practice, not necessarily chronicling it, but being out there watching him as he, took the field as a first-year head coach, even in practice leading up to camp. Is there anything different about him and this coaching staff as far as their approach that you see that you didn't see last year?
No, there's nothing different so far, but I mean, again, it's just one practice, and we've had conversations, press conference and just other conversations, but there's nothing necessarily different, so to speak. But I know there are some things that Brian Callahan would like to have done different because he said as much. So, and it's just like anything. After you do it, you start to learn the ins and outs and where you could add a little more here and take a little away there.
Do you think you feel more confident in himself, or a little bit more sure of himself? Do it seem that way?
No, it doesn't seem that way at all. He seems the same as far as the confidence and mindset and everything. Obviously, it's a bigger challenge, but I mean, like the challenge last year was, hey, look, you got this guy who could be a franchise quarterback. Shine him up, polish him, and allow him to be one. And we know that didn't work last year, so we'll see how it works this year. With the number one overall pick, it's a lot different, though.
Teron Davenport, ESPN NFL Nation Titans reporter, joining us on D-Mace, Vangan, and Donick. Great stuff as always, TD. We'll chat next week.
All right, appreciate you guys.
Always a pleasure to talk to Teron Davenport. 615-737-1025. The Vandy boys, Willie Donick, they're in fuego. We will discuss Vanderbilt as the SEC tournament begins this week. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game.
All right, let's talk F&M Bank. Banking made easy on purpose. Yes, we're all looking for ways to simplify our financial lives. Nobody wants to get home from work every day or get up every morning and say, oh, man, what am I going to do today about my bank statements or this or that? These things are part of life, and so why make it any more complicated than it needs to be? That is the philosophy of F&M Bank. They want to make your life easier through your banking and the relationship you build with them. They keep it simple. They've got a lot of great tools for you. If you're a business owner, They really want to hone in on you. If you're just an ordinary person just trying to figure out what to do, they've got tools for you as well. So the first step is to go to their website, myfmbank.com. That's myfmbank.com. They've got 20 locations in our listening area. There's probably one right in your backyard. Find out by going to myfmbank.com and find out how they can help you make your life easier from a financial standpoint. Your business means more to them. F&M Bank, member FDIC.
Against the monstrous 6'4", Braden Holcomb. The 1-2. That one is swung on. This one is driven. This is deep to left field, and it is gone. He did it again. Holcomb did it again. Vandy wins it. A walk-off 3-run bomb by Braden Holcomb. This kid has got magic in that right-handed swing. Oh, goodness, final score, 8-7. The Doors beat Kentucky.
Does that get you all riled up, Willie Donick? Get you jazzed up?
I was at that game. I was at it. That was just the beginning of the fun.
3 walk-off wins in 3 of their past 4 home games.
Yes.
For Vanderbilt, of course.
For Vanderbilt at home. So Thursday night, Braden Holcomb, when he said he did it again, he hit a walk-off home run, 2 outs, 2 strikes, team behind, down to the last strike against Alabama 2 weekends before that, then did it again against Kentucky. The following night, Friday night, Jonathan Vastine, after they had blown a 2-run lead in the top of the ninth, and they were down 8-7, hit a 2-run homer to end game 2 of the series. So a third consecutive walk-off home run in the bottom of the ninth. And then the following game on Saturday, they were only behind 3-0 and came from behind to win 5-3. R.J. Austin got the go-ahead hit, I think, in the 7th inning. But it was it's quite a roll that they're on right now. And in the backdrop of all this, and D-Mace, you can probably remember when they lost last year, they were 2-out in the first round of the NCAA tournament. They were not a number 1 seed. They went on the road. They really sagged. I think they were 13-17 in the SEC, which, of course, the SEC is so tough. You can be pretty good and still be 13-17. But there was a lot of questions of, look at Tennessee rising. Look at Vanderbilt sinking. And so early in the year, I think there were still questions about this team, how good they were. And now they're on this run. And man, is it ever a fever that's going on right now. I think even some skeptical fans are like, wow, can I start getting excited about this? Do they have a chance to get to Omaha? I think there was a lot of skepticism, but they've answered a lot of the critics. But you remember those times, right?
I mean,
some pretty,
even to a point where it was like, you're not questioning Corbs and his ability to coach this team.
And remember how offended I got by the notion, like with all that. Of course, I played for those that are newer. I played for Vanderbilt baseball before Tim Corbin, and Vanderbilt baseball went through we had some okay teams. We weren't bad, and only 48 teams got to the tournament back when I was playing. But there was a long drought of about 25 or 30 years where they did not get to the NCAA tournament. So after what Tim Corbin did, to me, it was, you do not question Tim Corbin in any way. It was absurd to say, hey, should he be on a hot seat or is the game passed him by? None of that was fair. But I understood when you've been to the top of the mountain, and that is a source of so much joy for Vanderbilt fans, especially given how tough it is in some of the other sports to succeed at that level. There was a lot of disappointment, like, oh man, is this window closing? But you see, by having a little bit of confidence that he'll figure it out, they've made some adjustments through the NIL and the transfer that everybody's had to make.
So as you mentioned, Willie, the role that the Commodores are on, they won 4 of their last 5 series in 12 of their final 16 SEC games, capped off with a sweep of Kentucky at Hawkins Field over the weekend. The SEC tournament starts this week. Vanderbilt will be the number 4 seed in the tournament. They open play Thursday against either number 5 seed Georgia, number 12 seed Oklahoma, or number 13 seed Kentucky. Now, Willie, for those who haven't been paying attention, the format of the SEC tournament has changed, yes?
It's changed a number of times since, for example, I played in the first, and this is how old I'm getting, D-Mace. I played in the first tournament held at the stadium that they still hold the tournament in, the Hoover Met. It used to be called the Hoover Met. Now it's Regents Bank Park, I think it's called. It's in Hoover, Alabama, right outside of Birmingham, and it's a great AA stadium. It doesn't host the AA team anymore, but it's a really nice, perfect spot to have the tournament. I played there in 1990. They've done different things. They've had only the top 8 teams make it. They've had, for a period of time, they took the East and the West divisions and had them play their own 16 tournament, which was weird. I didn't like that, so that didn't last very long. Then they went back to 8. Then some years it's been bring everybody. But this year, for the first time, I believe that they've ever done it this way, they're allowing all 16 teams to come, even Missouri, who went 3-27 in the league.
Yikes.
And they're playing single elimination, but the advantage you have is the higher you finish in the standings, you get a bye.
It feels like the SEC men's basketball tournament.
It's a lot. It's a page out of that book. It's a very similar format. So the top 4 teams, and so Vanderbilt's sweep got them into the top 4, which gives them a double bye. But it's only single elimination. So you could go down there and only play 1 game. Whereas if it went back in the days of double elimination, in preparation for trying to win the tournament, which is there's prestige winning the SEC tournament. Vanderbilt in 2019 won the SEC tournament and won the national championship. Tennessee last year won the SEC tournament and won the national championship. But I could also cite examples of a team that didn't look very good in the SEC tournament, lost early, and still did great in the national tournament.
Do you think it's better because they're not playing as many games?
I think it's a double-edged sword. You can certainly rest some guys, and maybe your pitchers get a chance to maybe recharge the batteries if you want to do it that way. But what you may not have by playing less games is to get some other guys who maybe haven't pitched as many innings, some great experience, because in these regionals.
But shouldn't it help you in the NCAA tournament? Because you hadn't played so many games. Before it was a double elimination. You end up playing more games. Whereas now, single elimination, you head into the tournament, the big tournament, you hadn't played as many games.
I think different coaches would give you a different answer.
Okay.
I think the benefit of playing a lot of games is you can use some pitchers who, with maybe if you know your team's going to be in the NCAA tournament, win or lose, you can try some pitchers that you might need in the very important games that you haven't had to use much, but you might very well need that guy in a close game that goes to extra innings, or if you get in the losers bracket and you burn a lot of pitchers, you might need that guy. And if he's had a big performance in the SEC tournament, or a guy who maybe has struggled some is all of a sudden getting hot and gaining confidence, that guy could play a big role. So the pitching, to me, is the big part of it. The position players, probably there's just as much benefit of not playing a whole lot of games.
The latest projection for the College World Series tournament on USA Today has Vanderbilt as a 6th seed nationally, hosting, of course, a regional at Hawkins Field against Southern Miss, East Tennessee State, and Tennessee Tech.
So the key is, and I think they have locked this down with that sweep. Their RPI and strength of schedule is top 3. And they've lost too many games, I think, to be the number 1 overall seed,
which will probably be Texas.
Yes. But what I think is the best thing to keep in mind is if you're in the top 8, and I think they're safely now in the top 8, even if they lost their first game down in Hoover, they've got it locked up. So that means you will play at home as long as you're in. And there's a big advantage. That is the road. The best road to Omaha is hosting the regional and the super regional. It hasn't happened every time Vanderbilt's been to Omaha. They have had to win a super regional on the road to get there. But it is a big advantage, I think, to play in your home park. And they've earned that home field advantage.
And if Vanderbilt wins its first game on Thursday, they are probably looking at a showdown against Texas in the second game, or their second game of the SEC tournament.
And they haven't played Texas. So because with 16 teams, this is to me why you should never have a 16-team college league. But there's a lot of teams you don't play. So Vanderbilt did not play Texas. They also didn't play Missouri. So that would have been, which
the
actually
best and the worst.
The best and the worst. So it's like one of those, you throw out the best and the worst. But but I think from a scouting standpoint, it might be interesting to match up with Texas to see how your lineup looks against their guys. Texas, you said, has probably got an inside track to the number 1 overall seed.
I would say so.
Yeah.
I was reading Aria Gerson in the Tennessee, and she chronicles the Commodores. How's that for alliteration? She chronicles the Commodores on a regular basis. And she said that the season turning point was a 14-0 loss at Oklahoma on April 12th. Why was that game, Willie, the sort of the put up or shut up game for the Commodores? Because from there, they went on the run that they've been on right now.
At that point in the season, I think a lot of people were concerned that their talent level was at a point where, in the backdrop of this is how tough it is to win on the road, right? Especially in the league. You can look bad on the road in the SEC. I don't really know why that is, but it seems like it's really pronounced. It's kind of like college basketball. You're much more likely to go on the road and get smoked than you are getting
by
smoked
any
at
team.
home.
Yeah.
And I think baseball has some of that. But you have the real good teams, the legit teams can go on the road and win in the league. And when they lost that game at Oklahoma 14-0, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, is this still a good team, but can be exposed, especially when they're playing really good teams on the road. It happened to them a lot last year. They were going on the road and getting smoked. But they recovered and won the last game in that weekend series. And from then on, they have really gradually improved. They're hitting a lot more home runs. That has been a big reason. And their pitching staff seems to get better each week. And they don't have these headliners like David Price or Sonny Gray, guys that you kind of knew were going to be high first-round picks when the season started. Kumar Rocker, Jack Leiter. Yeah. They've had a long, long line of them over the years. I don't know that this staff has that guy, at least certainly not at the beginning of the season. They've had some guys, though, that have put together some really good seasons. We talked to Sawyer Hawks. I don't know if I would call them their closer, but he's one of their top relievers. And I think they've all improved from last year to this year to where, like the Tennessee series is probably the number one example of them going into a hornet's nest where if you don't have it together on the mound, you're going to give up 10 runs because Tennessee just absolutely carves up teams mostly. But their pitching staff was good enough to go into that building and hold their own and win 2 out of 3. I think that is a big confidence boost.
Ricky on the text line says, Corbs is the best NCAA coach, period. The benches clearing versus Vols changed the season. They grew up at that moment.
Well, that was an interesting moment, but and if they meet again, you're going to see a clip of that, right? But to me, it's one of the most fun rivalries in the SEC in any sport, especially as we sit here in Nashville. But the animosity and the divergent approach, is that the right word? There's one end of the spectrum of how the game should be played.
Divergent works.
Tennessee plays one way. Vanderbilt is on the complete other end of the spectrum. So the two teams could not be more different with how they go about it when they take the field. One team, I call it, and this is a compliment, all right? I'm not trying to make a dig here because I think they wear it. They own it. They're Cobra Kai. If you've seen the Karate Kid,
yes,
they're Cobra Kai. Sweep the leg. Yeah. And I'm not saying they try to injure the other team like they did in that. That's not what I mean. But I'm thinking also the series. You ever watch the Netflix series Cobra Kai? Where Johnny Lawrence kind of becomes and Daniel LaRusso, they both kind of use little pieces of the other and they kind of grow, and it's quite interesting. And there's a lot of karate fights in the mall, and karate fights at the school, which makes for very entertaining.
Who doesn't love to have a karate fight at the mall?
You got to develop.
And after a while, it kind of gets old a little bit, but
we've all been there.
You got to develop in your karate.
It kind of jumps the shark after a while, but it's an intriguing take on that.
Breakdance fight at the mall, is that better?
But Tennessee is Cobra Kai, right? They're going to talk trash. They're going to try to intimidate you. They're going to come at you, and they're going to be bravado about it. Vanderbilt is not like that. And so there are a lot of recruits in this state, in this middle part of the state in particular, that both coaches will recruit because both programs want to have the best players in Tennessee. And they both get outside of the state quite a bit as well. But I think particular for youth baseball and high school baseball around here, you're watching very closely both programs who both have won a ton of games. They've won national titles. It's where you want to play. But if you're getting recruited by both, you have a very clear choice of what environment you're going to have when you're in the dugout.
Okay, you're a father of a son that plays baseball. Excuse me, or you are a son. Your dad plays baseball too. Yes, exactly. So technically, yeah. But cousin. You are a father of a son that plays baseball. Which sort of approach do you think these younger players like? Is it more, and it could be UT, it could be Vandy, but just the contrast of coach, like one team seems to have more bravado than the other team. Which way are kids sort of leaning toward? And it could be Vandy and Ole Miss or Michigan State and somebody. Which do they lean toward? The more bravado coach and team, or the more, this is the way we're gonna win?
It's a great. I don't know that it's a clear-cut answer. Most, I think it depends on who has taught you how to play. There was a great question that somebody asked because they were basing it on. If you watch the Vanderbilt Tennessee series, there was a home run trot by I think they played a couple games since then, but I think Fisher leads the SEC in home runs for Tennessee. He hit a bomb in the first inning. It was a tape measure. Blasted it off the scoreboard, no doubter, and he let everybody in the park know about it. He yelled every Vanderbilt player on the diamond as he went around the bases. It was unbelievable. But a question was asked when people were kind of commenting on that, and the announcers, this was Jackie Bradley Jr., the former South Carolina great who played for the Red Sox for a long time, was in the booth with the ESPN announcers, and they were commenting on, hey, this is the way you play. There's going to be a response. How do you react? But the question that people were asking is, when you do that, is Tennessee recruiting that type of kid, or when they get to campus, do they sort of
mold them,
go into the Cobra Kai? And this is the Cobra Kai part for me, because it's the way you're taught the game.
Yeah,
there probably are some youth league teams that are taught to me, having fun and being enthusiastic, that's one thing. But when you taunt the other team, trash talk the other team, try to engage the other team, that's a different level that you see in most than most baseball. It's an unconventional way to teach the game.
Vanderbilt opens its SEC tournament on Thursday against Georgia, Oklahoma, or Kentucky. We'll find out. We don't know who they're going to play yet, but they open the Commodores, that is, open the SEC tournament on Thursday. 615-737-1025. We'll wrap up the show next. We'll bring in Jared Stillman, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063 The Game. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Stillman and Company coming up next at 2 o'clock. But we welcome in Jared Stillman. Hello, Jared.
Oh, gentlemen, how was your weekend? It's good to be on the program. I see Derrick Henry signed a new contract extension today, held a press conference after all you people. Willie, your stats told me, your analytics told me Tajay Spears was better than Derrick Henry. And now he's signing another contract extension, which makes me very sad.
That is 100% incorrect and twisted.
Boy, oh boy,
Twisted.
you love twisting those things.
But I will say that I was in the camp that Derrick Henry was on the down slope. But we did say this, D-Mace, that we felt that him going to the Ravens gave him a unique opportunity because the defenses could not key on him, and it worked beyond my wildest expectations. I did not see that. But I still believe that I don't think Derrick Henry would have had a 1,900-yard season.
He wouldn't have.
If he stayed with the Titans.
No. The best thing he did was leave here for his career. Now he's going to come back, and I'm sure they're going to do everything they needed to do for him. But as far as his career, because of where this team was and still is, the talent-wise, we were not going to be able to appreciate his greatness. How many more years he would have played here? Why? Because he would have been carrying the team.
So, Jared, I want an honest answer here. Were you outraged when the day you found out that the Titans were moving on from Derrick Henry? Because I honestly do not remember it being an unbelievable. How could they do this kind of thing in the moment?
Well, they had telegraphed it the whole time. I mean,
right. So there was a build up to it. I agree. But was there outrage from you? Were you saying this is a huge mistake? They shouldn't do this. They should have brought back Derrick Henry? Because I don't remember you or any of us really saying that.
I was very disappointed that they didn't bring back Derrick Henry, only because I felt like Derrick Henry, everybody kept telling me, Jared, you can see he's still not the king anymore. He's not this. And I'm like, but the offensive line is so bad. It's so bad. And I felt like at the time they were going to go forward with Levis. We all knew that. And I felt like the best thing that could help out the young quarterback at that time would have been to A, rely on Derrick Henry, and B, to have defenses forced to stop Derrick Henry to maybe try to help out the young quarterback. I mean, I felt even when the Titans weren't good in 2022, where Derrick almost won the rushing title in 2023, like their best offense was either giving it to Derrick or faking it to Derrick and then throwing the ball. And I didn't think that you get better by getting rid of good players. I mean, I remember last year, for instance, I was in Toronto at a wedding, and the people that were getting married live in Nashville. And so there were a lot of Nashville people there. And this was after the Seattle practices. And someone came up to me and said, we're going to be better this year. You just don't understand. And I was like,
so you think they should have kept him?
Practice.
You think they should have kept him?
Why? I was very adamant.
No, why?
You think they would have won more games? They would have been in a better position if they had kept him?
Because I don't think you get better by getting rid of good players. And I think Derrick Henry is still
did they get better while he was here, like those last couple of years?
No, but they were a better team than they were last year because Derrick Henry was on it. I mean, they almost beat they almost
only works in horseshoes and hand grenades.
Dobbs, right. But again, we're trying to discuss whether or not Derrick Henry is valuable.
I'm not saying
whether or not they won or the team was so freaking bad. And yet Derrick Henry still, with Josh Dobbs at quarterback, almost carried that team to the division title. Derrick Henry is still a very, very
What happened
very
his
good
last
player.
year?
He still ran the ball better than anybody else could run the ball here.
I'm saying the team wise. I never
the team
even
sucks.
Even
because
when
the team sucks.
Even when Derrick Henry, what did I say, Willie? I said Derrick Henry will rush for 1,500 yards when he goes to Baltimore. He will consistently be a 1,500 yard. I didn't think he declined as a player. This team declined, and with him on it was only going to be bad for him.
Okay,
so what they need to do is they need to get Derrick Henry. You need to keep Derrick Henry and then get the team around Derrick Henry to be better. That's what you need to do.
It was going to take some years, and about time they got good, Derrick Henry was going to be done.
Okay,
they wanted to do that with Steve.
Willie wanted me to find some receipts, so I did, which one backs up Jared's claim from September 30th, 2024. Derrick Henry still has it, and I tried to tell you, and you all told me he wasn't the same. But still
that's September 30th.
And
I want to know
stinks.
what it was in May.
I'll have to look that up, but here's September 6th, 2024. watching Derrick Henry in a Ravens uniform last night was foul. Also, I felt vindicated that Derrick Henry wasn't really that good of a fit for the Ravens because he doesn't help Lamar Jackson when Lamar has to play catch-up versus the best quarterbacks in the AFC.
He's a
I
perfect
am still
fit.
worried about that, by the way.
How?
that
Why?
When he gets into one of these playoff games. Now, look, Mark Andrews dropped the ball last year, and I can't put that on Lamar. But that when Lamar gets into a shootout, like Brady, we remember all of the games that Brady won, but how many did he come back where the Patriots were down and it was 14 points in the last 2 minutes, the 28-3, whatever. When that game happens, Derek goes to the bench. And I think Lamar needs help
Whoa.
when the ball is in his hands, more so than when they have the lead and they can just bludgeon you to death with who's got the ball. Derek, Lamar, you don't know, you can't tell.
But that was an issue with the Titans too, taking him off the field on third down,
Sure.
which they mostly did.
So
right?
it would have never mattered whether he was here or in Baltimore. He would have been taken off the
Titans
field.
would have won the Super Bowl if Derrick Henry was on the team last year.
No, I'm not saying that. Yeah.
You're a better football team with Derrick Henry, and I just don't believe that you get better by getting rid of good players. It's like Simmons. Titans fans are sick of Simmons, and they want to get rid of Simmons, and they're like, we should trade Simmons because they're tired of his crying like a crybaby. And I'm like, even though I don't really particularly care for Jeffrey Simmons' brand of crybabying, and I can tell you Jeffrey Simmons does not care for me. I do not want them to trade Jeffrey Simmons because the second you trade Jeffrey Simmons, now you have to go get a player like Jeffrey Simmons to replace Jeffrey Simmons. You don't get better by getting rid of good players.
All right.
And Derek was a good player.
Jared, I do want to ask you this. Your girlfriend, Lindsay, is a proud Canadian. How is the Stillman household doing today following the Toronto Maple Leafs 6-1 loss last night in Game 7?
So we were at a Canadian wedding last night.
Yes,
there were a lot of NHL dignitaries that were in attendance.
A Canadian wedding on the night of a Game 7 with the Leafs.
Was the game on somewhere at the wedding?
Well, today is Canada Day. So,
Yes.
and I'm learning about this. Apparently, or maybe this isn't Canada Day.
Canada Day
I
is
think,
in July.
1st.
Yeah, Canada Day is July
Yeah.
1st, I believe.
Today is a certain kind of Canadian holiday that I've just learned about. It's like their Memorial Day is today. So that's why the Canadian wedding was last night, because everybody else has okay, get that one. So they all have today off. But I would say that it was more, I think it was kind of more acceptance when it came to the Leafs around the Canadian crowd than surprise. I thought what happened to the Leafs last night was what was going to happen to them in Game 6. I was shocked with the testicular fortitude that they played with on Friday night, because I'm used to the Leafs puking all over themselves like they did last night in Game 6. They gave me hope in Game 6 that they were going to show up in Game 7, and it was a disaster. People don't talk enough about this. I mean, I guess it's because I don't know how many people in everybody's orbit cares about the little individual details of this. But that cheap shot on the Toronto goalie early in the series, to me, that probably swung the series.
He also did take a shot to the face mask as well. So that he did take the elbow from Sam Bennett, but before that, he took a shot to the face mask, which probably
contributed
made things worse as well. But Jared, you have mentioned, while lamenting the state of the Titans, that you wonder if you're going to let your little one grow up to be a Titans fan. Any reservations from your girlfriend to let him root for the Maple Leafs one day?
I don't think it's about that as much as it is about me. If you're a Predators fan, and while the Predators had a nice little run there, I think the expectation for what Predator fans expect out of the Predators compared to what Maple Leaf fans expect out of the Leafs are very, very different. And I told somebody at this wedding last night who said to me, are you Canadian? Because there was kind of like a Canadian side and American side. I was like, actually, I'm not, but I'm on the Canadian side. And I said, but my son might end up being a Leafs fan because the Preds aren't very good, but I don't know if I can afford the therapy that my son may have to go through if he decides to become a Toronto Maple Leafs fan. Imagine a Titan fan and a Maple Leaf fan. I don't know.
That's a rough existence, my friend.
And son of you,
and your son.
God, goodness, man.
That'll do it for us today. We'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Stillman & Company coming up next.
Be love on your people. Have a safe, blessed, wonderful Monday. Peace.
you.